Spy Family Code White was fun, but what was the point to it? Is it just empty filler? A movie like this can't have the characters progress. It can't advance the plot. It has to start and finish at the exact same point. Code White has a lot of pandering to offer the dedicated fan. There's a big bump for animation, but can it stand up as an actual movie on its own merits? There's a lot to like, but also some pretty big problems. It was certainly popular, but can a film where nobody grows, changes, or develops ever be a necessary watch? Code White has a weight to carry, an over-encumbered bag of lingering characters and development from the series, an obligation to keep these characters sitting still in space with no changes. Is there any point to Code White? And even if it doesn't matter to the story, is there more here than just filler? Let's review. Code White's pitch, in a lot of ways, is taking the franchise from manga to the big screen. It's a different beast to the anime. A movie should focus on the core of the series, not the smaller charms. We get lots of Lloyd, Yor, and especially Anya, but no Eden Academy. Plus, if for some reason you're a Frankie devotee who only watches for Frankie and sleeps through the other scenes, really viewing the series as an exploration of his bachelor double life. The informant's so brazen, he just can't stop getting away with it, even when he's in a balloon of his own head. Well, for a start, you'd probably think Spy Family is taking a suspiciously long time, building up one of his customers before it presumably goes back to the main Frankie story. But you'd also give Code White a bad review. It's focused on the bigger aspects of the series, and it does feel like a movie-level version of Spy Family, at least on the surface. One moment I liked for this was Lloyd's introduction. It's like the opening minute. We come in at the final stage of some spy mission, quite similar to the opening of the series itself. This one is particularly fun. Along with the brief Yor establishing shot, it serves as a nice intro, moving us from page to cinema, or in my case projected onto a sad wall. The animation here is obviously a step up, and it's nice to see the boost not only in the action but elsewhere. A small Yori flashback looked great to say it was such a random scene. The opening when the main theme kicks in, I mean the music's great throughout, it feels like something much more special than just filler. Perhaps the most successful part of Code White is how it tackles adaptation of some of the more difficult parts of Spy Family. This series has 3 protagonists, and arcs usually focus specifically on one out of the 3. On top of that, it splits between plot progression, spy stuff, and a more general slice-of-life comedy. There's a skill in combining the slice of life with the intrigue, high-thrill spy stuff. Once we reach Frigus, the movie settles into having a bit of fun with the characters. At least that's how it feels at first. It fits the show on a higher level, starting with a slice of life and then escalating up to the action. But what's unique about Code White is how much of this first act isn't actually comedy, but direct setup. So many lighter comedic lines come back later. It's better weaved together since this is a self-contained film rather than an arc. Like the shootout stuff. The technique that Lloyd uses to bust the game, it's cracked back out in the finale. Or the backstory on the old plane outside the restaurant. Or the fact that the Colonel's gluttony is the only thing that forced Anya to find ingredients, which sets off the chain that leads to this. Watching the final act can feel like you're constantly being reminded of minor moments from earlier that you didn't expect to go anywhere. There's some deft writing here, what feels like playing around in the interplay. The stuff that we've come to expect. It turns out to be vital to the plot, but we do run into the problem. We can't progress, which means the character stuff, fun as it is, can only indulge in what's already been set up. Like, Yor and Lloyd have a tender moment, which has to end like this. The film doesn't take any big risks, but with the limitations of what the movie could be, it's an impressive balancing act between the two sides. The journey down on the train is another early example. It's basically when the movie starts. The train's great, I'm not complaining about the train. I love train scenes, all of these. We get to see the characters out of their normal settings, all the lovely slice of life, different outfit stuff you'd expect, until the entire plot comes cascading down, from a toddler needing to pee and stealing a chocolate. It's all built out from the comedy. If you're the type of Spy Family fan who doesn't like the lighter side of the series, then you might not like this. I do though. I especially like the ending reveal that the entire plot could have been really easily avoided. Great that the entire film echoes out from the mundane. It gets the comedy right, but more importantly, Code White interweaves the tense with the light just as well as the manga does. The whole microfilm dessert quest is the primary plotline to Code White, but none of this can have an impact on the actual story of Spy Family. That's a given, and the film even points fun at it with Lloyd working so hard to hide what's happening, but for some reason they have to try and raise tension to pretend it'll impact the wider story. The intro section contains almost tedious attempt to add stakes, almost clickbait levels of trying to give an unreal importance to the events that we're going to see. Lloyd is being removed from Operation Strix, a plotline which says this movie could end the show as a whole, like it's done. Manga over, no more chapters. Go watch Code White to find out why. It's stupid, building things up so they seem important, which doesn't work because the viewer knows it's an empty threat. It's the equivalent of I'll turn this car back around and go home. It's also basically irrelevant to everything that happens afterwards. The story barely even mentions this plotline once it's underway. You could remove the entire Strix replacement plot. Actually, it feels daft to even call this a plot. It's not a plot. If Anya needing the bathroom is War and Peace, then this is a bad tweet. It lifts right out and nothing would even change. It's barely even wrapped up at the end, because ultimately this movie has to start and finish at the exact same place. That's not just the case for the plot progression, but for the characters too. You'd expect some character development from nearly 2 hours of action. Alright, just for context, these are all shorter than Code White. For the characters to be somewhere different when they finish the film compared to where they started, but they can't be. It's a non-canon movie. It just treads water. So what's the alternative? The approach spin-off films often take is to introduce other characters, who we can see new layers of our main cast through. But Code White avoids this too. All we really get is indulgence in the setup that we already have, which can make it feel like filler, but very fun filler. The only major character introduced is the villain. When we first meet the antagonists on the train or their henchmen, it's odd. They get a moment of actual menace, locking themselves in a room with a young child, which is then quickly undercut when Yor beats them all up off screen. It's a good gag, but it doesn't exactly help you take the villain seriously. Watching this followed by the ingredients search, I thought this meant Code White would follow the main series' lead in having relatively underdeveloped villains, but when we meet them again, it goes differently. The main villain is handled quite well too. He's established in the restaurant with a generally unsettling vibe. You can see straight through disguises, which we learn through his enthusiasm for cakes. All that fun in Act 1 comes back in Act 3. With the villains babysitting Anya after the kidnapping, we get a lot more actual menace. For a show with a child, it gets genuinely quite specific and chilling with this threat. Sure, the rank and file army members would be more threatening if Yor hadn't have taken them out so easily, but the Colonel himself is better done, if he is a little shallow. The Colonel in Code White is more genuinely menacing than most villains in the series, but he's not exactly a fleshed out character. There's no well-defined or interesting motivation. Most of the villains' development just comes down to making them seem like a real threat, rather than interesting characters themselves. It makes the third arc work for the protagonist, but it doesn't add any depth, and that's something this movie direly needed. The biggest problem with this movie is that no matter how well established the villain is, the rules are made up, and what happens just doesn't matter. It's a non-canon movie, what stakes could there even be? Well, even if we know how it's going to end, with the family safe and back home, the journey should justify it. It's a bit of a problem for reviewing Code White. For the most part, the main plot avoids this problem. I know where it's going, but it's entertaining. The stakes often just come down to how long Anya can resist going to the toilet. But the Yor plotline in particular is, it's bad. What's Yor's motivation in this movie? Lloyd's is simple. He wants to help Anya get a stellar and achieve his outside spy mission too. As mentioned, the whole Operation Strix is being taken away from him is kind of meh, but that's a tiny part of it. Anya has her typical fantasy motivations, but we're ultimately rooting for her to not get messed up. What about Yor? Early in the film, she's convinced that Lloyd's cheating on her. Alright, we get these kind of plots a lot. Yor being concerned about imaginary problems in their imaginary marriage. It's funny enough that this vague imagination plot escalates until she's hanging off a plane and doing this. Where it becomes a problem though is the climax. Everyone needs something to do. Everyone needs a showpiece. Anya gets the poop god sequence, Lloyd gets this amazing sequence fighting in disguise. Yor's action climax though, it's a fight against a random powered up henchman. He's the Terminator. Yor fights the Terminator. The action is fun, I like the animation here, but what's the point? We've already seen her easily dispatch these grunts in Code White. There isn't really a reason for them to be fighting. This particular guard has received 0 screen time prior to this and is basically an extra. What's the point of this fight that takes up a decent part of the finale, beyond just showing off the animation, which is great, but compare it to Yor's action in the climax of the cruise arc and it's night and day. Sure, she's fighting off attackers characters here too, but she has a motivation. You know why it's happening, there's depth, there's an emotional core. It might be unfair to compare an arc focused on Yor to this movie, but her plot of all 3 main characters is a big downgrade. Arguably, she's showing she's willing to get pretty rough in searching for Lloyd and Anya, but playing her plot for laughs with an imaginary affair and a fake marriage kind of stunts it. I'm thankful they didn't try to cram a plot with the garden in here though, because they could have. It seems like the kind of thing that would fit. But her role on the airstrip could honestly cut straight from here to here, and you wouldn't lose anything. The fight's a bit silly. Yor kills the Terminator with lipstick. It's a bookend to the shopping earlier, but there isn't any reason for it to happen beyond it would look cool. Alright, so your pot aside, the part of this production maybe most worthy of praise to me is how tight the script is. Again, if you disregard one of the 3 main plots. At a slightly longer, hour 50-minute runtime, you'd expect more slack, but the writing's almost textbook. For big stretches of the opening, a lot of what happens or is said is necessary to build the plot for the 3rd arc. It's tightly constructed, it all comes together perfectly. It's not just slice of life then action, even if it feels that way at first. Like using the plane from the restaurant, the lipstick coming back, the Colonel's sense of smell, Nightfall's excuse for being here at all. It's maybe this polished script that helps the movie feel like a movie, and not an extended arc. Up first act feels just like fun, and then we get the low point at the end of the 2nd act with Anya threatened to be cut open, Lloyd shot down, and Yor trapped in the plane. A weirdly dark set of circumstances for this film. And this is all not to mention that they called Frankie in the middle of the night. He had to go get a train, it's cold there, it was late notice. The guy's probably cold, he's waiting at the station. I don't think he has like a phone to play with or anything. Like, what's he doing all night? He's the real victim here. It's also an hour and 12 minutes in, like exactly at the 2/3 mark. I actually had to go in with a calculator and work this out. It's exactly there. It's crazy. It's basically perfect on the timing here for the 2nd act low point. The biggest problem is needing to shove in a plotline for 1 too many characters, which isn't a problem exclusive to this movie. The MacGuffin that they're all searching for, of course, is naturally revealed beyond a microfilm. No detail on what's on it is ever given, which I didn't even notice for a while, because it doesn't really matter. The film is structured in such a way that these details don't need filling in. In timing and structure, Code White pulls off a bit of an impressive trick. As far as its own main plot is concerned, it's a very well-made story on the periphery of Spy Family. Is it enough, though? Is that worth being a movie? Ultimately, a big question with a film like Code White is, does it actually justify its own existence? Is it necessary? Could this have just been a few part story arc instead? I mean, maybe. Yeah, it maybe could have. But it's noticeably better as a movie. Seeing all the elements of the first 2 acts come together is much more satisfying as a single piece. It's a fun side story. As a standalone film, though, disconnected from the main series, it's pointless, but ultimately a very enjoyable experience. It's hard not to come away having had some fun. It has a better villain than most arcs of the show and manages to feel like it fits in with other less world-shaking arcs. But I don't know how good a film can be which refuses to develop any of its characters. Nobody's changed by the experience. My biggest disappointment reviewing Code White is the lack of chances taken, not finding a way to show a new side to the characters. We can't get permanent development, but that doesn't mean we couldn't have had a deeper exploration. Code White isn't revolutionary, but with solid pacing, plotting, and structure, it's fun and well made, fan-pleasing. And I left pretty happy on the surface level. Just ultimately, the film doesn't go any deeper than that. It might be the best case scenario for a movie with the restraints that Code White had, but despite that high quality, it's never going to be an essential watch.